focusing on doing good work and enjoying what you're doing. You don't come out of drama school and start getting called in by Nina Gold and the National Theatre. To think of yourself as a creative rather than think of yourself as an actor. An agent sells and a casting director buys.
Hello, Danny from Actors Coaching International in the US.
Hello, Daniel from Actors Coaching International in the UK.
So, Danny, what classes does ACI provide?
I'm so pleased you asked that, Daniel. We provide weekly core acting classes.
Online and in person.
We run self-tape classes.
Casting director workshops.
Audition-ready classes.
Industry professional workshops with award-winning directors.
Script analysis sessions.
Intensive 2-day acting workshops.
Why not go to actorscoachinginternational.com to find out more.
Jay, you are in the room with us this evening. How are you doing today? You well?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you both?
Yeah,
Yes,
good. How you
very
doing,
well, thank
Christian?
you.
You good?
I am very well.
Yeah, lovely. Well, it's wonderful to have you on, Jay, because, well, we've just been chatting a little bit before we started recording, and we've wanted Jay to come on the podcast for a while now, but we've never really stoked up the courage to just drop a quick DM and actually ask. And we really wanted another agent on this series. We dropped Jay a message, and a few days later, we got them on the podcast. So it's absolutely wonderful, that efficiency there. We won't mention the fact that it's just because Jay happened to have a totally free week and we got lucky. We're going to go with that Jay really wanted to come and talk with us. But it's wonderful to have you on today, and we'll start with the question that we ask all our guests. It's always the hardest one usually, which is, how do actors get in the room?
I think you have to trust a lot that you will be found. I can't believe we're like 30 seconds into this and I'm already quoting musical theatre. But it's true. It's like there's a lot of obsession with getting in front of the right people and getting seen and getting in the room. And I understand that. I was an actor and I come from that environment myself. But actually, I think focusing on doing good work and enjoying what you're doing is so much more important, and let everything else worry about it. All you can really do is be absolutely prepared, and you can't plan for luck in a sense. You can't that can't come into the planning process. You can just do the work and be ready. As RuPaul says, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. But yeah, and if you're doing that, if you're focusing on that, you will get noticed. People will hear about you. Your name will get around, and you will start getting called in for better and better things. And it does take time. It's like you don't come out of drama school and start getting called in by Nina Gold and the National Theatre. That happens to like 0.05% of graduates. For most people, it's quite a long process, building up a decent body of work, getting their name and their reputation out there, and always continuing to deliver every time.
A question we always move on to next as well is we're really interested to understand how you got started in this industry and what led you to being in it.
I'm a baby of the industry. I started when I was 11 years old, so it's coming up on 40 years now. And I started at English National Opera at the London Coliseum in 1985, around about that time. And I stayed with the English National Opera for 7 years and that was my early career, was in opera. Then I went to university and discovered cigarettes and alcohol, and opera went by the wayside, and musical theatre stepped up. And yeah, so I've been knocking around the industry in one form or another since about the mid-1980s, really.
Yeah, and what sort of drew you to where you are now? I know you are still a sort of multi-hyphenate creative, and we'll talk about your specialism in that as an agent anyway, but what drove you towards the agent side of things specifically? I know you worked at another agency before coming and setting up your own. What was it about that side of things that particularly attracted you?
At some point, I think in every actor's life, other things become more important to them, and I'd spent a long time running around the country and doing lots and lots of different things. And I was 40. And to be honest with you, I was tired and broke. And I think at that point, having done it for quite a long time, you kind of look around and you think, what do I still have to tick off? What do I have to achieve here? I've made my West End debut. I've done some TV. I've done some radio. I've done some film. What am I hoping for? And I think, if I'm really honest, I think I was kind of hoping that I would magically wake up one day and be Kenneth Branagh, and that my career would take that turn. But I think after a very long time of working in the industry, you realize that that's simply not going to happen. And it's not that it can't happen. Of course it can. It can happen to anybody at any time. But actually, it really is not something to build a career on, wanting to be famous or well known. And at that point, my husband is an actor as well. And so two actors, both broke, both out of work 98% of the time. And because Reese is younger than me, I kind of felt, I needed to be the one to move on and do something new. I'd just been shooting Pride, the feature film, and I was talking to Stephen Beresford, who wrote Pride, and we were having lunch one day, and he just said, well, why haven't you ever thought about becoming an agent? And something just clicked. I just thought, why haven't I ever thought about becoming an agent? I know so many people. I'm a teacher. I spent some years as a secondary school teacher. I love telling other people what to do. Why not give that a go? And I think sometimes in life, serendipity, things just occur magically. And almost within 24 hours of me making that sort of decision that this was something that I definitely wanted to look at, I was on Arts Jobs and a job had come up at Simon & Howe. And I had a look at their list and I realised that what I lacked in knowing anything about agenting at all, I could immediately identify that Simon & Howe didn't have any musical theatre clients at the time. And so I wrote to them and said, look, this is where I am. I've made the decision to leave acting and become an agent. I have no experience at all, but I can identify that your client list does not have my speciality. I know a lot about musical theatre. I could really help you. And I got the job and I spent 5 years at Simon & Howe. And then after that, it really just felt like the right step to just try it on my own for a while.
That's really awesome. And it segues really nicely into the next question, actually, about your own agency, JBR Creative. And at JBR Creative, as well as sort of just actors, for want of a better term, you specialise in multi-platform artists. So creatives who work as an actor and maybe a director, a composer, comedian, dramaturg, lots of different combinations in there. And, life solely as an actor is hard enough as it is, as we're all aware. What can an actor who wants to work in other artistic forms as well do to give them the best chance of success all round?
Well, the reason that we operate in this way is because that was our career. That was my career. That is my husband's career. We were, and everybody that we knew, we were all struggling. We were all picking up a bit of work here, a bit of work there, and we were all flexing our creative muscles at all times. We were directing, we were writing, we were dramaturging, we were just leading these creative lives that had a little bit of everything in it. And one of the things that kept coming up when I was talking to actors at Simon & Howe was that people worried that if they went and became a director for a while, or they got a reputation as a writer, that nobody would want to hire them as an actor. And that intrigued me because A, that was not my experience of having a multi-hyphen career myself, but B, when I asked them who they admired, the same names were coming up, like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Daniel Evans, Michaela Cole, like the epitome of multi-hyphen creatives who do not a little bit of everything, that's patronizing, but they work in all fields. And I think when you ask what can an actor do or what can a creative do, I think the first thing is to think of yourself as a creative rather than think of yourself as an actor. And then if that's your job title, then it doesn't matter where your salary is coming from. In 2020, you might earn more from acting than you earn from writing. And in 2021, you might earn more from writing than you do from directing. But they're all salary streams. They're all multi-hyphenate salary streams that build your one income, which is creative. And so we really wanted to work with these people because as the industry diverges and diversifies, I think it's going to be more and more important, not less and less important, that people do have a number of strings to their bows and are capable of doing a lot of things. Who would have thought, 2 years post-lockdown now, and who would have thought that so many people would now be video editors and directors because they had to, during lockdown, everybody had to learn how to operate a video camera because if you booked a commercial during that time, they were just dropping the equipment off on your doorstep and you were shooting it all yourself. And it's that kind of skill that I think is essential for actors to have as we move towards 2025, towards 2030, towards 2040, and all the developments and all the things that are changing. But in terms of the one thing that actors can do is get organized. And realize that when I'm talking about being a multi-hyphen creative, I'm not saying you're doing all things things at all times. I have still found, and it's still quite a hard pill for some actors to swallow, but I've still found that you need to compartmentalize, you need to organize your time, and you need to be able to say, I'm going to direct for 3 months and not think about acting. Then I'm going to come back to acting and I'm going to act for 6 months. Then I'm going to go off and write the novel that I'm working on or the play that I'm writing on. I'm taking 6 months off to do that. You really do have to kind of divide your time like that. But honestly, when I was talking about giving up acting, Stephen Beresford said to me, just go, no one will fucking care. And if you want to come back, still no one will care. And I think that's so true. Most of us, we are the main character in our own story. And so we place our own personal life as being much more important than it is to anybody else. The industry is huge and vast, and it will not notice if one actor takes 6 months off to go and write a book or write a play, and it won't notice when you come back. Time moves a little bit differently on my side of the desk. That's another thing that I often say to actors. What seems like a long time to you is still recent to me. Like when actors say to me, oh, I haven't had any auditions in months. I'm like, but you had one like a couple of weeks ago. And they're like, no, that was a long time ago. Time moves a little bit differently over on this side of the table.
Just while we're on that, actually, what would be the atypical amount of time for an actor to go without auditions typically? Because I hear some people say I haven't had an audition for a year, some people say 3 months, and I'm always curious, what is the sort of average median?
I don't think there is one, because your own personal journey as an actor is completely individual. And unless you have a twin brother with exactly the same skill set as you, who's getting an audition a week, even then he's probably getting your auditions.
Yeah,
you really can't compare yourself to anybody else. I know actors, I can't remember her name, which is such a shame because she was so wonderful in it, but Dogfight, which was at Southwark Playhouse a few years ago, the girl that played the lead in Dogfight hadn't worked in 3 years, I think, and then landed Dogfight and went on to win the Evening Standard Newcomer Award, I think. So there really isn't, there isn't a time frame from it. And also you're changing, you're developing all through that time as well. There are very many reasons why you might not audition for months and months and months, and then you'll have a run of it for months where you're in every other day. And I think that's the most important thing that I could probably say to anybody is stop comparing yourself to anybody else at all. Your journey is your journey, and things will rush ahead when it is time, and they will slow down when it is time. And there's very little you can do to control that, because you're changing as a person, your skill set is changing, and your looks are changing as well. Speaking as somebody that, used to have a mop of ginger curls, we will change.
Yeah, absolutely.
About 3 years into Christian's future there, haven't you? That's
I'll be going to Turkey. I'll be straight on the plane to Turkey. Moving on to your website, it's amazingly written and in itself has a lot of great tips for actors. And before we even start talking about your book later in the podcast, when it comes to representation requests and what to put specifically in an email, you state who you are as the most important bit. Why is that the case? And what does that look like structurally in an email?
I think who am I is the most essential question that an actor can ask and continue to ask. You'll do all of this work when you're in your final year at drama school, or you're applying to agents. Who am I? What have I got? What am I promoting here? Don't then put it on a shelf and expect that in 5 months, in a year, in 5 years, the answer is still the same. You have to do this constant work on yourself, working out who you are. Why I think it's important is, and I say this a lot when I'm talking to graduates and students, is an agent sells and a casting director buys. They're two slightly different ways of approaching it. But essentially, we are interested in you. We are interested in the talent. That's what this entire industry runs on. It's like it's the engine, it's the oil that keeps everything going, is talent. That's what we're interested in. And I think one of the things that I address in the book is a lot of actors will say the same thing. And I still say it today. People will write and say, I'm hardworking, I'm passionate, I'm determined. That's like working in Sainsbury's and going to your boss at Sainsbury's and saying, I am exactly the same as everybody else here, but you should promote me. And it's like, why? You need to know who you are, because you need to tell us why you are different to the 1,000 other applications we're getting who are all saying identical things to you. And I think it's so important. I use this example a lot. The very best, maybe not the best, but certainly the one that sticks out in my mind in 10 years of agenting, best application I ever received had in the subject line, 28-year-old non-binary mixed race aerialist seeks representation. It was like one of those old-fashioned dating adverts in the newspapers. But it really caught my attention because that person knew exactly who they are and what they were offering me to promote, because that's what I do. I'll go to a casting director and say, you need to hire this person because they can do X, Y, Z. I know what I'm selling. You need to know what you're selling as well. It's really upsetting and disappointing to me when actors say to me, oh, but there's nothing unique about me. There's nothing different about me. And that breaks my heart, because I think it is working out what is unique about you, even if you are another 5'2" Caucasian blonde musical theatre girl with a high belt who can, whack out a triple pirouette. Even if your skill set is the same as everybody else, even if your look is very similar to everybody else, you have to know what makes you unique. It might be your passion for colourful knitwear, or the fact that you like riding horses, or you can operate farm machinery or something. What makes you different? And start from that, work out from that. I think it's so important that actors know who they are, because otherwise they put themselves second at all times. And one of the other things that I notice in emails is actors doing this, putting themselves second. They will write to me and tell me about the show that they're in. They'll tell me all about the director. They'll give me an outline of the plot. I've been around quite a bit. I do not need to be told the plot of Romeo and Juliet, by the way. I don't think anybody does. But they will describe the plot. They will describe the amazing director that they're working with, or the great MD, or the fantastic set design, or the projections that they're using in the show. And they will forget to tell me anything about themselves. And I think it's a very curiously British thing that we don't like to sort of promote ourselves and big ourselves up a lot. This kind of leads me on to your question about how does that look in the structure of an email. I was on a panel a few years ago with 3 British agents and 3 American agents. And this question came up: how do you write to an agent? And of course, all 3 Brits, we went off on the perfect 3-paragraph structure should be blah, 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 blah. And the Americans just went, oh my God, no one has time to read that. Just send me your CV. It's you I'm interested in, you and your work. Everything else is just bells and whistles, and I will find that out at interview if I'm interested in you. But my God, no, are you really reading like all these 3-paragraph emails a day? And I thought, I am, yeah. And actually, you're right. Most of them are, if I want your life story, I'll get it in interview. For the most part, I want to know who you are, why you want me as an agent. That's what so many people forget to mention, why they want to work with me, and what I've got to sell. Just those 3 things. That's enough for me. And most of that I can tell from just your CV or your body of work. The other thing that I say on my website is most actors are not writers. You shouldn't be worrying your pretty little heads about a perfect 3-paragraph email. You should just be talking about you and your work. And if that's easier for you to do by sending me a video, a private unlisted YouTube link where you just talk about your work and yourself, those get much more response from me, because I'm immediately starting to see your personality and getting a sense of who you are that I'm not getting from the perfect 3-paragraph email that I can spot a mile off because I wrote a book on how to write it. Do you know what I mean? I think I really do enjoy watching videos that people send me, and people get very inventive with them now. They'll cut them in with bits of them performing, so bits of them dancing. So it's almost like a mini sort of trailer about themselves. And I think actors have a lot more fun doing that than they do stressing themselves about perfect grammar and perfect sentence structure and writing an email. I'm an English teacher. You're going to have to be absolutely spot on to impress me with the written word. So why not just, show me what you do, which is your performance. Show me that rather than worrying about how to write a perfect email.
Yeah, getting the wonderful best semicolon in is not going to be the way forward, is it?
I am always impressed when somebody knows how to use a semicolon.
I actually thought you might say that, The
English teacher thing in me, I'm like, oh, that's it does not make me go, that person must be a brilliant actor, or I do kind of go, oh, somebody knows how to use a semicolon, because that's tough.
They're a nightmare. I still get confused. I think I know, and then I double think again, and then I get it wrong. But
I still double check.
It's always one of those things. But with these emails, it's something you kept bringing up there, is that you'll ask additional stuff at interview. And it's one of those things that a lot of actors forget, is that, whenever an actor asks me about it, is I say that an agent email isn't there to get you signed. It's there to get you the meeting.
Yeah.
Because no agent will ever sign a client off just an email. And if they do offer you rent from just an email, that's a big red flag from the other side, if I'm honest. The biggest actors in the business will still sit down with a new agent for coffee before they sign with them, if we're talking about the sort of Tom Hiddlestons of the world, right? And that people end up writing emails. They're obsessed with trying to get that yes off the email. That often I see, I don't know if you've seen this, Jay, when I read through a lot of these emails, they come across where they write a sentence and then the next sentence is what they think they need to write based on what the agent will think on the first line. And they write it in like a conversation. It becomes highly emotive. Or people that say they're MT trained and they're interested in TV, they will directly highlight the fact that they don't have the skill set. They'll be like, whilst I am MT trained, I can go and get screen acting classes. And it's like, focus on what you can do now, as you say. Do you find structures often come in like that?
Yeah, I find it more in CVs. That I call it writing your CV for mum and dad rather than writing it for an agent or a casting director. And it's like everything you've ever done is on there, and every show and every cabaret and every reading and everything is on there. And it's like, this is too much. You're not thinking about what I do or about, again, who you are. If the email says I want to work in TV and film, but the CV is filled with musical theatre, cabarets and so on, there's a disconnect there that is not working for me. And I get confused by that. And it's exactly as you say. I think you need to demonstrate to the industry that if you want to work in a certain field, that you understand that you need to put the work in, you need to put the training in. You're 3 years at Mountview or Arts Ed in musical theatre, learning how to high kick and do corner work. That doesn't cut it when it comes to theatre, straight theatre. That doesn't cut it when it comes to film. You still have to demonstrate that you're putting the work in. I just find most emails are just overwritten completely. That's why I always say, sometimes my clients will say to me, oh, can I send a personal to this casting director? I'll say, yes, but send it to me first. And they'll send it to me, and you could cut half of it. And we do. And it's an exercise that, again, it's from my days as a teacher, checking people's coursework, where you just kind of go, you need to do a word count and then cut the word count in half and cut it right down to just the essential information. And you can do that twice. You can always do that twice. And people are terrified of it. But then as soon as they start doing it, they realize how many times they're using synonyms for hardworking. I'm hardworking. I work hard. I'm really passionate about my work. And it's like, you're saying the same thing 3 times.
Hi, we're selftape.co.uk, but don't forget the hyphen. That's self-tape.co.uk. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a mouthful worth chewing on. Anyway, as the name suggests, we do self-tapes for actors in London. Maybe you've run out of time. Maybe you have kids. Perhaps you can't find a reader. Or, let's face it, you could just be a little bit at setting everything up. Well, that's where we come in. But it's not all we offer. No, we also shoot showreels for actors too. Custom showreel scenes shot from scratch to show casting directors and agents exactly what you can do. Well, that is, if they can be bothered to watch. Any In The Room listeners get 10% off all of our services just by quoting In The Room. So get in touch and visit www.selftape.co.uk. Or don't, it's completely up to you. But whatever you do, don't forget the hyphen. You get it.
I'm going to read you a quote from your website with a question afterwards, but it's a really good quote that I wanted to get in there, and it's really specific. So it says on your website that community is at the heart of what we do at JBR Creative Management. What makes us unique is that we use some of our income to enable clients to develop their creative practice. We've been able to fund our own productions under the banner JBR Productions, as well as offer our clients financial support to help them produce and develop their own work. This aspect of your business is just completely awesome. And as you say, it's unique. Why was it so important to you, and what payoffs do you see with your clients following genuine financial investment?
I think it was important to us because it's where we come from. We understand the struggle of crowdfunding for projects and begging friends. And what we were noticing was all of these crowdfunds, all of these fundraising things, it's the same people giving money over and over again. We're essentially eating ourselves. We're just kind of passing it around. And I want to be successful as an agent, but one of the reasons that I want to be successful is so that we can do more of this work. We can make this much more central to our company. But I don't want to have a hard life. I don't want to put myself second, as I've said, but I'm not that interested in fast cars and big houses and, exotic foreign holidays. One of the things that I thought was very important for my clients, a lot of my clients are starting out in the industry. And one of the things that I thought was very important was that we practiced what we preach, that we weren't going to be spending vast amounts of money on expensive office space and the perks of agenting. We were going to try and put as much back into our client list as we possibly could. And in that sense, it would give them a sort of, not a complete safety net because the sums are never huge, but it would enable them to feel some kind of ownership within the agency, as if the harder they work and the more they earn, the more they get back. I always call myself a socialist, and I think agenting I think the industry has the opportunity to really be a really special kind of place where essentially, like, the highest earners on any agent's client list is paying that agent's salary so that they can work for those who aren't earning any money. And I love that. And I think that's very important that we all kind of understand that, and we see that at the beginning of the career, when you're not earning huge amounts, your agent is still working as hard for you, and they're able to do that because of the people at the top of the list who are earning the big money. And so I really wanted my clients to kind of feel that, and to be able to see the results of that, to kind of feel that, oh yeah, that film that I shot last summer, part of that money went to help that new client put on that show at the Fringe or make that short film. I wanted everybody to kind of feel that there was ownership of the whole company and all that creativity within one there. That was very important to me. And also, I understand from Arts Council applications that one of the things that you have to demonstrate is that you have been able to raise money from other sources. And so us giving money to clients for their projects is helping them with their Arts Council applications as well. So it was just very important to me that I was putting back into the industry instead of just taking.
Before I move on to the next question, just want to say that's incredible that you do that. So massive props to you.
A lot of other agents do it. I'd love to say I'm the only person that does it. I think a lot of other agents do it, but some of it is more sort of investment in a project. And so they're still getting something out of it. Right now, it's not an investment, it's a gift. We give them like a couple of £100 here or £100 there, depending on the project. And we don't ask for anything in return. We don't ask for any points or any investment, or we don't even ask to be thanked ever on it. If they do, we're thrilled. We love that. That really, people often ask me, what moments as an agent make you happiest? I always used to say, when a client lands their dream job or when they make their West End debut. But actually, it's going to see a show and knowing that we had a hand in helping it happen and that we are able to do that. That's what makes me proudest these days, that the agency is successful enough that we are able to help some of our clients as they're starting out in their own sort of creative practice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge help. Me and Matt can attest to it. When you first leave drama school and you need to get the show reel and the new headshots and things like that, it adds up, doesn't it? So really, really helps.
It really does add up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just reminding me that I'm about to get mine probably redone at some point, and that's just like,
yeah.
You're ready to climb that financial mountain, step at a time. Off we go. Anyway, we won't spiral down into my therapy anymore. So, Christian, you better ask the next question. Let's crack on. Let's crack on.
You'd need a hedge fund to fund that, Matt. In April 2021, you released your book, Getting, Keeping and Working with Your Acting Agent. One we would highly recommend to any of our listeners. It's written so clearly, it's got easy to action tips and so much depth from someone who sits on the other side of the table. What was the motivation for you to write a book in the first place? And was it more easy or difficult than you imagined to organize your thoughts and put them on paper so people could understand it and put them into actionable steps?
I had written a blog on my personal website for about 4 years, just tips for actors, like basically just sort of my thoughts rather than anything structured. It would be like, here's some advice on how to self-tape, or here's how to stay positive, or I read this last week and it was about what musical theatre rep you should have. And it was just sort of like 500-600 word blogs once a week. And Nick Hearn Books came to me and asked would I be interested in turning this into a book. And I was. I love the question about how difficult was it to put pen to paper. Lockdown happened, is what happened. And I know this happened to a lot of people. I've spoken to a lot of people about it. One of the things that happened to me was I couldn't read. I lost the ability to concentrate during lockdown. And reading is like one of my great pleasures. And I can get through like 3-4 books a week when I'm on a roll. And I couldn't read. I couldn't sit. I couldn't focus. I couldn't do any of that. And audiobooks tend to send me to sleep. So there was this huge gaping hole in my life where reading had been. And then there was this enormous gaping hole in my life where my career had been, because there was nothing happening in the early days of lockdown. I was in panic mode, to be honest. I didn't really know what I was doing or what was going to happen. And we're very fortunate that we'd just moved to Woolwich as lockdown happened. And there are 100 acres of open space around here. There's 100 acres of woodland and commons and nature reserves. And it's extraordinary. We're so privileged and so lucky to have this much space in Zone 4. And so I walked this one a lot, didn't I? We walked lots. And I had an app on my phone called Otter, and I just dictated. I just talked on like these long 2-3 hour walks. I just talked into my phone everything that I thought about the industry, everything that was upsetting me, everything that was frightening me. And then I went back and I put those like 3-hour recordings in through a dictation machine and printed them out and then put them with my blogs and eventually sent them all to Nick Hearn. And they were amazing, and they helped to edit it and shape it and ask questions on it, and it became what it is. And I'm still really proud of that book. I haven't reread it in a while. I've been rereading it recently, and it still stands up. I still stand by almost everything in it now. And yeah, it was very much inspired by a book that I'd had when I was a kid by Anna Scher, who was one of the great pioneers of children's youth theatre in London. And she wrote a book called Born to Act. I think it was called Born to Act. And it was just a sort of guidebook for kids, for 11, 12-year-olds, about what they needed. And it was no nonsense. It was not at all sort of fluffy or just follow your dreams. Or it was about hard work and determination and grit and resilience, but written for young people. And I put that kind of book together with another amazing book called In-Depth Acting by Dee Cannon, who used to be head of acting at RADA. She died a couple of years ago. And Dee had been a friend. She lived near me. We would have coffee together and talk about the industry. And again, Dee Cannon's book was very much no nonsense, no bullshit. You want to do this? Be prepared to work. And I used to take private acting lessons with Dee, and she was incredible but terrifying. She wouldn't take any excuses. If you turned up without having done the work, then you would be in trouble. She would ask whether you were serious, and she was very hard work and very no bullshit. And I wanted the book to be that sort of combination of encouraging for young people, but also just no nonsense. It's tough. This is a tough industry, and just follow your dreams is not going to cut it, because it ain't all rainbows and unicorns at all. So I wanted something that would be both encouraging and inspiring, but also that would talk about the amount of work that you need to do and be prepared to do.
And it's really encouraging that was a collaborative process with you and Nick Hearn book. So that's a really cool thing that they wanted to work with you on that. And you totally get that no nonsense approach when you read your book. It's incredibly easy to read, which I think is great, because I think you often find a lot of people in our creative industry, actors, especially the people performing the words, there's so many actors that are dyslexic or have some form of word processing issues, where actually scripts and books and complex language, weirdly enough, is actually a real struggle for some actors. So to have such an easy to access guide like that was great. And you say it's no fluff, but there's some good positivity and humor in there as well. It's a really awesome book, and whilst we've already encouraged people to go and get it, is there anything that you can tell us now, one easy to implement tip for any actor looking to secure an agent or an actor looking to work better with their agent? What's that sort of singular nugget you can give us?
If I was to distill the entire book and everything down to one thing that you could do right now, would be go through your CV, and for every credit on there, ask yourself, why do I think somebody needs to know that I did this? I think, as I said earlier in this, so many CVs are just filled with fluff and filled with are padded out with work. And I use inverted commas there. And I think the most important thing is to go through and ask, why is it important that a casting director or an agent knows that I did that cabaret, or that I did that fringe show, or that I did that particular performance? And if you can't come up with a good answer, then it shouldn't be on there. I might use this in the book. I can't remember. A director that I was having dinner with one night who said this to me, and she said, most actors make you hunt through shit to find diamonds. Just give me the fucking diamonds. And I think that's absolutely essential. If I'm having to poke through your CV to find the 4 brilliant credits because there are 30 not so brilliant ones, it should just be 4 brilliant credits. That will impress me way more than knowing that you filled your time. Great. It's wonderful that you stay busy, but if it's not adding anything to your CV, it's taking away.
That's really, really interesting. I've never really thought of that. I've always thought of your spotlight as the fuller the better, but that's really interesting.
No, because what happens is we're then having to we have to interpret your CV. So we're kind of looking at each credit and going, I don't understand that one, or, oh, that's great, they worked with Michael Grandage there, or, oh, that's brilliant, they were at the Donmar. And there's so much on there that was like, that's a play I've never heard of. I don't know whether that's a lead role or a supporting role. I don't know who that director is. I've never heard of that venue. And that's getting in the way of the really great credits that most people do have. At the beginning, yeah, put a lot of stuff on there. But then as soon as you start getting better credits, as soon as you've got a decent Shakespeare that replaces your drama school Shakespeare, knock off the drama school Shakespeare. If you've got, a decent role at a number 1 theatre that beats the Fringe show that you did, knock the Fringe show off there. Get the CV to just the diamonds. Really just work on polishing that CV so that when I'm reading it, because I don't read it and go, oh, only 1 job this year, only 1 job last year. Look at like Jude Law's CV or Tom Hiddleston's CV. They don't have 37 jobs a year. You can't when you're filming. If you're doing a huge feature film, you may have 1 job a year because you're on set for all of that time. People fill up their CVs because they think looking busy is better than having good work. Good work is always going to be better than being busy.
Whilst all agencies operate differently, there's a lot of misinformation that floats around about agents a lot, how they work, what they want, etc. What's the most frequently heard myth you see here in terms of how you operate? Can you call out a particular thing and put it to bed once and for all?
I think the thing that always kind of makes my hair stand up, but you know what I mean? It gets my hackles up a bit, is when people say your agent works for you. No, we don't. You would have to be Andrew Scott and then some to be able to pay your agent's salary solely on what you're earning alone. Your agent works for 60, 70 people, and it's the combination of those 70 people that pays your agent's salary. That's who we work for. We work for a group of people. We don't work for one particular person individually. And that's the one thing that kind of bugs me a bit. So I always kind of say that we work together. We're not working as equals at all. I'm the one driving the train, but you're the one laying the tracks. We have to be communicating with that. You're the one leaning out the train window and yelling, we're going right, lay the tracks to the right. And so I'm like, right, okay, we're going right. We're going towards theatre now. And then a couple of years later, you're like, now we're going left. Okay, now we're going towards film. And I'm laying the tracks. I'm doing what you tell me, but if either one of us takes our foot off the ball, like takes our mind off the path, we're going to crash.
I like trains, so I was more than happy with that one. That was a winner of a metaphor for me. I enjoyed that.
I did that once with somebody and I went, woo, woo! And they were like, what is that? And I was like, it's a train. And they were like,
train.
Yeah, in like 1940. And I was like, okay.
Love a steam train. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So you recently launched a sister agency to JBR Creative, really recently, called Jabber Voices, which, as the name would suggest, it's a voiceover agency. And you run this with Rhys Jennings. I want to say, is that correctly pronounced, or have I correct that?
That's right.
Oh, there we go. Whoop, whoop, as we say. Right. Why was now the right time to launch this new venture? And what is it about story-driven voiceover work that made you want to focus the agency in that direction?
Rhys is my husband, and he had worked sort of backstage on the agency for 5 years since we started. And increasingly, he'd been taking a more active role, and he now has his own small list at the company of actors that he represents. We had always talked about moving into literary representation because we represent a lot of musical theatre writers and screenwriters, aspiring screenwriters, and so on. And so we'd kind of thought that might be the most natural next step for us. But I think you really have to you work with the personnel that you have. And launching a literary agency would have taken enormous amounts of work on both our parts because it's not a field that we know huge amounts about. And so a lot of the questions were, how much time do we have to kind of really find out about this part of the industry and this particular world? And it just became very apparent that what we had in Reese was somebody that knew an awful lot about the voiceover world. He's an ex Carlton Hobbs winner, and he spent time on the BBC Radio Rep. He does a lot of audiobooks. He is voice of Loki in Marvel Move, and he knows that world. You work with the personnel that you have, and it seemed, once that kind of dawned on us, it seemed like the most natural next step, that it should be a voiceover agency, should be our next area that we move into. And so that's how that came about.
That's really awesome. And it's because it's not the Reese that I'd recognise, and then I didn't make the connection that of course it's your husband, so I should have made that connection before. So before I embarrass myself further, Christian, do you want to ask the last set question on our list?
Yes, I'll do that, yeah. You state on your website creativity first, and in the same section of text you mentioned the possibility of a new creative second enlightenment, with social media and technology reference as being part of that. So we want to know, to you, what is the future of creativity in the acting industry?
One of the things that I always say is I think the three pillars will not fall. I think stage, television and film, and radio to an extent. It's a very different style of performance and a very different way of working for actors. But I think stage, television and film, they will not fall. They will continue. But I do think as streamers become more and more popular and niche programming, it's like we have a horror channel now, like a streamer that just streams horror movies. We have a streamer that just streams Broadway shows and so on. I think we're going to see much more of that coming and much more of that happening. And I think the people that will be best placed to move into this new sort of creative enlightenment or this new creative dawn will be the people that kind of have adjusted their skill set so that they can do a bit of everything. I was looking back through some old emails that I'd sent, and I was talking to my clients, I was talking to people in the industry about TikTok in early 2018. And it's like, I think TikTok was only like 4 or 5 months old at that point, certainly in the UK. And nobody was paying any attention to me. And I was saying, this is incredible. At the time, it was all sort of teenagers making stuff and just putting it on there for no other reason in those early days. No other reason than just being creative. And it was blowing my mind. And I kept saying to people, this is the future. This is the next big thing. And it absolutely is. And I think there will be more and more platforms like this. More and more people will become their own directors, their own video editors. Most people have a smartphone these days. They are so powerful. You literally have everything you need in the palm of your hand to be able to become a studio. Essentially, all a studio is the ability to make films and distribute them. And that's what we have now. Everybody can be their own studio because we have the means to make and distribute at the same time. Where does the money come from? And I think that's the next big scary thing. And I really do, my Twitter, I don't use it so much anymore, but I talk a lot about universal basic income. And I think that as we see more, and Elon Musk saying the other day that all jobs will eventually fall to AI. Yeah, a lot will, but acting won't. Acting, it can't. Certainly not stage acting. That's not going to fall to AI. And I think there's so much opportunity there. But I do think we need to address the fact that most jobs will fall to AI, and we're going to have a huge workforce with no money coming in and nothing to do. And we're hardwired to be creative. This is what we're born to be. We are born to be creative. And I think we're going to come to, when I talk about a sort of new enlightenment, I think we are going to come to an age where we have a universal basic income. And I think most people will create when they have that. Most people will make stuff. And I think it's going to be really, really exciting to see what happens. There are tremendous challenges ahead. Certainly there are things to be scared about, particularly in AI and how that's taking over and being used in screen work and how that's going to impact the industry. But I do also think that there's huge opportunity that's going to emerge from AI when we've kind of worked out how to manage what it can do and what we are going to allow it to do and what that leaves for everybody else to do.
Yeah, now that AI summit the other day, so hopefully there's going to be some form of regulation around what they're going to be allowed to do. But should we move on to the rapid fire questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad, Jay, what you used there, the word to use opportunity and exciting. And I think sometimes a lot of the time we look into the future and it is a lot of doom and gloom, and understandably so in some regards, because a lot of the time it's all that's pumped into your brain on a daily basis if you look anywhere. But as you say, you know, exciting opportunity, and there will be chances for people to be creative moving forward, which is great. And speaking of being creative, this is about as far as we can go. 10 stupid rapid fire questions that I told Jay about just before we start recording it, and then you just went, you didn't prep me on this, you didn't brief me on this, so we'll see what happens. But
Anything could happen in the next 2 minutes.
but it's 10 really, you know, any of our long-term listeners will know that there's nothing serious here. They're just silly questions that we'll ask you, and we'd love it if you can answer it in one sentence or less. There's 10 of them. Christian, do you want to kick it off?
What makes a good actor?
For me, good acting is not pretending to be somebody else. That's what kids do in a playground. Good acting is filtering another person's life through your own experiences and allowing an audience to see both at the same time, if that makes sense.
Love that. Theatre or cinema?
Both. Can I have both? Because I love them both. And
We've
I
had
think
a
they're
few
very different
people.
skills and they're very different ways of working, but wow, they're just, they do different things to you. Extraordinary.
Biggest industry pet peeve?
Kissing people that you don't like. I mean, not that I don't like, but it's like I go to so many events and you see people that I've got nothing in common with you other than we're both agents, and stop seating us together. I went to a wedding and they sat all the agents on the same table. It was like it was like, yeah, it's that thing of like having to be social with people that I probably wouldn't choose to be social with in my personal life.
I mean, both Christian and I can firmly attest to being on that side of things, can't we, Christian?
Oh, yes.
Should everyone listen to the In the Room podcast?
Absolutely. And this is something that I've been talking about recently. I get asked by a lot of places to provide books, to give books for the reading list that goes out to students. And I always say there should be podcasts on these reading lists as well. So much valuable information comes through on this and the 98% and podcasts like that. And I think, yeah, definitely this podcast, people should listen.
Comedy or drama?
Comedy. Because I always say, I think if you can do comedy, I'm going to assume that you're good at drama, but I don't assume the other way around. And I think that's borne out by some of our greatest dramatic actors started out in comedy. I think it's something to do with timing and just that sense of allowing an audience to see two things at one time. I think the best comedians expose the vulnerability underneath the comedy, and I think that makes for great dramatic acting.
A skill every actor should have?
Used to be typing. I always used to say every actor should learn how to type because you can make some really good money as a temp in your out of work things. But now I think video editing, I think social media management, I think anything that's working with new media that you can do from home. You can like be a social media manager for somebody from home. And yeah, I think those are much more valuable skills now, understanding how new media works.
Your greatest strength?
My greatest strength is I can come up with like pretty decent answers to rapid fire questions that I haven't been prepped on.
Your biggest weakness?
The fact that I have anxiety attacks all through this podcast because I was thinking about these 10 rapid questions at the end.
Self-tape or in the room audition?
Always. Everyone's always going to do better in the room. I think everyone's always going to do better in the room because then you do it and it's done. And then somebody will say, oh, can you try it like this? Or can you try it like that? And then you do it and it's done. You're not watching it back over and over and over again and analyzing every word and every breath and every inflection. Yeah, I think almost everybody would agree. But self-tapes do have advantages. They do have massive advantages. And I'm grateful that we have them. But I think most actors would prefer in the room.
And lastly, the title of your autobiography.
Lord, oh God, they gave it a good shot.
Love it. That's great. And thank you for getting through that. I'm really sorry that we caused you to have sort of an anxiety attack through the course of the podcast thinking about those stupid questions. We both think you did a really, really good job there. And actually through the whole podcast as well, what really has struck me through this podcast is just how useful and efficient it is, and how you articulate your answers is in a way that anyone that listens can understand and get value from this conversation. So really, thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you for sharing your advice. It's been a wonderful time. Have a lovely rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us in the room.
Thank you both. Lovely to, I was going to say meet you, see you, but lovely to be like in my office and you're not with me.
That's right, Edwin. Love it.